Testing 1, 2, 3. Warning, the following video may contain adult language and themes. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. If you have a problem with this, stop playing this video now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You had your chance to back out. No turning back now. Hi, this is my review of the movie called Berberian Sound Studio. At least that's what I think it's called. Let me see. It's a pretty elaborate name there. Yeah, Berberian Sound Studio. It was released in 2012, I believe. And I think it's either an Italian movie or it's an English or British movie. I'm not sure which. It stars both British and Italian actors. And let me just, before I get into spoiler territories, let me just first off start by saying I didn't like this movie. I thought this movie was, while not terrible, it was probably more bad than it was good. I'm going to start to get into spoilers now, but how I would summarize this movie is Hitchcock combined with Stanley Kubrick. Now that might sound awesome at first, but imagine if Hitchcock and Kubrick were working on a movie and they were given a script and a story that was really shit. And they were told, you cannot change this. You can't change anything about the script and this story. But everything else is up to you. That's basically what this movie is. The plot is basically this English guy, flies out to Italy, to this sound studio, to do ADR work for this movie, which is basically making the audio, re-recording audio and making sound effects for this movie that's a horror movie. And that's basically all there is to it. He basically goes there and they record some sounds for this horror movie which it's implied that what's going on screen is very graphic. We don't really see any of the horror movie. We just, there are sounds this English guy has to recreate with fruit and stuff, like when someone's getting hacked to bits, he's just chopping up a watermelon or something, and they record that, so they make their own sounds. And yeah, it's made clear that he's never done a horror movie before. And yeah, and he goes there and basically they record all this stuff, and basically the director comes in. And he's this really sleazy guy, Italian guy, and he sexually harasses one of the actresses, and then she destroys her audio for the movie and leaves. And so they have to re-record it all, so they hire another actress, and then she quits, and then the movie ends. So, and another weird thing about this movie is that it's classified as a horror movie. I found out about this movie by looking on, a list of the horror movies released for 2012, and it looked interesting. And let me say why this shouldn't be a horror movie. Basically, in this movie, nobody dies, nobody's killed, nobody's even hurt. No physical harm is actually done to anyone. Yeah, one of the actresses is sexually harassed, but it's just the director just felt her up, and he's just kind of a dirty man, and that's it. She wasn't violently hurt or anything. That's it. And so it's how can this even be considered a horror movie? I don't think it can be. Even the old school horror movies like Psycho, somebody at least died, or at least there was threat of violence, Maybe if violence actually wasn't carried out, there was at least the threat, but there's not even the threat in this movie. There's a running plot line that goes nowhere of the English guy trying to get his money back for the flight out there, because he was hired to go out there, and it's made explicitly clear to him by one of the actresses, she told him secretly that, it's hard to get money out of these producers, they only give you money if you actually demand it, and back them into a corner, and he gets fed up, and he demands his money, and then the accountant's well, we don't have a record of that flight. So, and he's I'll get the record myself, and nothing ever happens. That's as far as it goes. And it's just, this movie, like, nothing happens. I was waiting for something to happen in this movie, something eventful, something, usually in these kinds of movies, at least by the end, even on the slow burn type horror movies, at least at the end something happens. In this movie, nothing happens. Also, this movie is way too artsy for its own good. I thought it was really well directed, though. There were some really artistic shots, but this movie did not warrant that high quality of directing, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's like if Kubrick and Hitchcock directed a really shitty movie, this is what you would get. And there's also and there's at one point in the movie where, like, one of the actresses said, did you ever stop to think why these directors hired you? Because obviously he came from England, so there must be some reason why they hired him. You'd think there's going to be some payoff where they reveal something like why they hired this specific guy. And no, it never is revealed. And, like, there's also a point. I'm sorry I'm saying all this out of order, but I honestly don't remember what order these events happened, because it was such a bad movie. But there's a point where, he's making sounds, creating these sounds for this movie, and it's very gruesome sounds he has to make. You don't see, the gruesomeness that it correlates with. But and he, like, can't. There's a moment in it where he says, "I can't do this," and the producer's like, "You have to. We hired you to do this." And he's like, "I can't. I'm not used to doing horror movies." And it's so it's just a really weird movie. Like my previous plot summary of what I said happened in this movie is pretty much what happens. Like, and they just go about it very artily. They do it. I don't know what they were going for with this movie. Like I said, no one dies, no one's even hurt. And there's a moment in this movie where, like, they splice in a documentary about the countryside. It's sort of like this to take you out of the experience, I don't know. It's just, maybe the director, if I see an interview with the director, he can shed some light on why he did some of the things he did. Maybe there's a deeper meaning or some, metaphorical meaning as to what the fuck this movie was about, but if you don't read too much into it, it's just bullshit. It's not any good. I don't know what they were honestly trying to do with this movie. If you have some deeper insight, please let me know about what the fuck this movie was supposed to be. Again, it's called Berberian Sound Studio. It also felt like it was trying to emulate those old Italian horror movies, which I like old Italian horror movies like Dario Argento, etc., etc. Well, that's pretty much the only Italian horror movies I've seen for the most part. But even in Dario Argento's movies, more stuff would happen than in this movie. Yes, people would actually die. There would be threat of violence. At the very least, threat of violence, or some action happening. Some sort of climax. There's no climax in this movie. It's just complete bullshit. Yeah, like I said, let me summarize the plot. This is basically what happens throughout the whole movie. An English guy flies out to an Italian sound studio to record audio for a horror movie. They record some audio for some very disturbing scenes using vegetables and watermelon, slicing it up to make slicing sounds. One of the actresses gets felt up by the director. She leaves in disgust and destroys her audio. They try to hire another actress to re-record the audio. Those actresses quit. Then the producer's like, shit, Then the English guy brought over to do the sound, like, they do this artistic thing where he fades into the white. Then it's over. It's just, God, I don't know. This movie just, see it for yourself and see, that's what I'll say, though. It looks like it's really competently made, though. It's just, you'd think they would have had a better script or a better story to go along with it. I don't know. Jeez. Like I said, I would not classify this as a horror movie. It's just not. I would classify it as suspense. I think I'm very flexible on what I'll consider a horror movie, but I don't think I would consider this a horror movie. It really pees me off when people put movies on their top horror movie list that aren't horror movies. Like, for instance, somebody put Prometheus on their horror movie list. Prometheus, in my opinion, is not. It is sort of a horror movie, but it's firstly a sci-fi movie. Then secondly, it'd be a horror movie. So I wouldn't really consider it a horror movie. But anyway, Yep, really disappointed with this movie. Um, in fact, I think on Internet Movie Database it's unrated. The rating, the MPA rating, is unrated. I don't know why it was, because this movie's not even probably rated R, unless there's another version I haven't seen, which maybe I ought to check that one out. But yeah, this movie's just, I don't know what they were thinking with this. Um, okay, thank you. Have a nice day.